There are children in this country whose hands speak louder than their parents' mouths. Most of us never learn to listen with our eyes. If you've ever wished someone had listened to a child sooner, just one day sooner, before the worst thing happened, type the words "I hear you" in the comments below. Type it before this story ends, because there's a boy in this story who waited 2 days to be heard, and his sister waited longer than that under the dirt. This happened in Magnolia Bend, Louisiana, a town shaped like a question mark along the Atchafalaya River. Population 2,847 before the storm. Less after. The storm was called Hurricane Camille Jr.
Category 4.
It came in low and angry from the Gulf at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday, and by sundown it had taken the roof off the elementary school, the steeple off the Methodist church, and the patience out of every man in town who still thought he was going to fix things by himself. But the storm wasn't the worst thing that happened that week. The worst thing happened in a backyard, behind a rosebush, under a cellar door, that someone closed on purpose. Boone Vickers came into Magnolia Bend at noon on the Wednesday after the storm, riding behind 4 other men of the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club, his Harley loaded down with bottled water and field rations, and a duffel bag of children's clothes his daughter had mailed from Texas a year ago, that he'd never gotten around to dropping off at Goodwill. The road in was half river. The boys had to walk the bikes through 2 stretches where the asphalt had gone soft. A pine the size of a grain silo lay across the southbound lane near the parish line, sawed in half by somebody who hadn't bothered to clear the pieces. That was the kind of work a hurricane left behind. Half done, half undone. Same thing. Boone was 61. He had been a Navy corpsman in 2 wars and a small engine mechanic in the long, quiet years between. His hair was white now, cut close, and his beard was the color of old smoke. There was a tattoo on his left forearm of a medic cross gone to fade, and a thin silver bracelet on his right wrist that his granddaughter Lila had braided for him when she was 8. Lila was 11 now. She lived in Texas. She had been deaf since she was born, and Boone had been learning to sign since the day his daughter sent him the diagnosis, slow, as a man learning a new alphabet at 60. He was not good at it. He was, however, persistent. There is a difference. The hurricane shelter was the high school gym. The roof had held, mostly. Red Cross had set up cots along the basketball court, and a generator outside was running loud enough to drown out conversation. Inside, 340 people sat or stood or paced. Most of them had not slept. The smell was wet drywall and unwashed bodies, and the particular sourness of fear that has nowhere to go. Boone and the boys unloaded water, then food, then the clothes. A woman from the church kitchen hugged him without saying anything, and he let her. He had learned years ago not to ask people what they needed in the first hour after a storm. They didn't know yet. He was about to head back out for a second load when he saw the boy. The boy was standing alone against the wall by the trophy case, in a wet blue t-shirt that was too big for him, and gray sweatpants that were too big for him, and bare feet on a concrete floor. He was maybe 10 or 11, thin, black hair plastered to his forehead. His arms were crossed tight against his chest, and he was looking out at the room like a person who had been told to wait and forgotten what for. Boone walked over slow. He did not crouch. He had learned that too. Crouching down to a child made you a different kind of stranger, but a stranger all the same. He stood a few feet off and waited until the boy looked at him. The boy looked at him. Boone said, very gentle, "Are you here with anyone, son?" The boy didn't answer. His eyes went to Boone's mouth. They stayed there. Boone understood in about 2 seconds, and his stomach went tight. He raised his right hand, slowly. He put his palm flat against his own chest. Then he lifted 3 fingers. Then he made the shape Lila had taught him for the word friend. He was clumsy at it. He knew he was clumsy at it. The boy's whole face changed. It was not relief. It was something more careful than that. It was the look of an animal that has been left alone in a trap long enough to stop trusting the people who walk by. The boy raised his hands. His fingers were small and fast. His left pinky was bent slightly, not from birth, from something else. He signed 3 words, then 4, then a whole sentence, and then another sentence, and Boone caught maybe half of it, because the boy was going too fast and Boone's ASL was still kitchen table slow. But he caught the 2 important parts. The first part was the word sister. The second part was the sign for Barry. Boone held up a hand. Wait, wait. The boy stopped. His chest was rising and falling fast. Boone said the words out loud as he signed them, the way the YouTube woman had taught him. Slow, slow, slow down. One more time. The boy nodded. He swallowed. He started again. His hands moved through the air between them, and what they said was this. They buried my sister alive. She is still breathing under the rose bush. Please, please, you are the only one who knows what my hands are saying. Boone did not let his face change. He had learned that in Iraq. When a child tells you a thing that will rearrange the rest of your day, you keep your face the same as it was before. Because the child has been watching faces their whole life for the moment, the adult decides they are too much trouble. He signed back. Slow. You, safe here. The boy shook his head. His hands moved again. Not safe. She is here. Boone looked up. A woman was walking across the gym floor toward them. She was maybe 38. Blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. No makeup, wearing the gray scrubs of a hospital that wasn't this one. She had a bottle of water in each hand and the kind of tired expression that a person practices in a mirror until it looks real. She got to them and she put a hand on the back of the boy's neck. Not hard. But the boy went still in the way that small animals go still. There, you are. Sweetheart, she said. I've been looking everywhere. She looked up at Boone, and her eyes did the work her mouth did not. They apologized. They explained. They asked for understanding. She said, I'm so sorry if he bothered you. He gets confused after a lot of stimulation. He's deaf, and the storm shook him up bad. Boone did not move his hand from where it rested on his belt buckle. He said, ma'am. She said, my name's Marlena Thibodeau. I'm Eli's stepmama. We came in last night. His daddy passed about a year ago, so it's just us now. Bless his heart, he's been having a hard time. Boone said, ma'am. The boy was looking at the floor. His shoulders had folded inward like paper. Boone said, where's the rest of your family? Marlena's face did something quick. Just a flicker. Then it composed itself. She said, my husband's sister has my little Aurore. She drove her up to Baton Rouge before the storm hit. Aurore's the younger one. She's 6, and she just couldn't handle the noise of a shelter. So Tante Regine took her. I'd have sent Eli too, but he wouldn't go without me. You know how boys are. Boone did not know how boys were. He had a daughter. He said, that's a long drive in a hurricane. She said she left Sunday afternoon. Way before the bands came in, Ellie's hands moved, just a little. Down at his side, where Marlena could not see them and Boone could LIE 3 letters. Spelled out clean. Boone gave no sign that he saw. He looked at Marlena and he nodded the way a man nods when he is agreeing about the weather. He said, you all need anything. Dry clothes. Food. She said, oh, you are too kind? We're all right, thank you. She put a little more pressure on the back of Eli's neck and started to steer him away. Come on, baby. Let's get you a cot. Eli looked back over his shoulder. His right hand came up to his chest, palm in, and he tapped his collarbone twice. Then he held up his pinky and his pointer finger and his thumb in the shape that Boone, by some grace of his slow studying, recognized it was the sign for I love you. But Eli wasn't saying it to Boone. He was saying it to somebody who wasn't there. Boone watched them walk away across the gym, and his hand on his belt buckle had gone tight enough to hurt. He went back outside to where Deputy Wendell Boudreaux was directing a flatbed truck loaded with sandbags. Wendell was 44, broad in the shoulders, the only sworn officer in town who hadn't been hurt in the storm. His sheriff was at the hospital in Lafayette with a broken hip and a concussion. Wendell had not slept in 30 hours. He had the look of a man holding a town together with both hands. Boone said, Wendell, I need a minute. Wendell said, Boone, I love you, but I do not have a minute. Boone said, there's a boy in there, says his stepmama buried his little sister alive. Wendell stopped walking. He turned and he looked at Boone. He said, what? Boone told him. He told it short. The boy was deaf. The boy had signed it to him. The stepmama had a story about an aunt in Baton Rouge. The boy had spelled out the word lie behind her back. Wendell rubbed his face with both hands. He said, Boone. Lord have mercy. The Thibodeau woman, I know her. She works hospice at Our Lady of the Lake. My wife works the same floor. She is not a person who would, Boone said. That's what they always are. Right up until they aren't. Wendell said, I cannot go knocking on a woman's cot in a Red Cross shelter on the word of an 11-year-old boy who is upset because his sister isn't here. Boone said, I know. Wendell said, that's not how this works. Boone said, I know how it works. I'm telling you what I saw. Wendell looked at him a long moment. Then he sighed, and it was a sigh that came up from somewhere deep, from a place where deputies in small towns store the things they cannot fix. He said, Give me till tonight. Phones are out. I can't even call Baton Rouge to verify. Roads to Lafayette won't open till morning. If by tomorrow at first light I cannot get hold of this Tante Regine, you and me will go visit Mrs. Thibodeau. Together. With my badge on, Boone said. The kid doesn't have till tomorrow. Wendell said, the kid is in a Red Cross shelter, brother. He is not the one I'm worried about. Boone looked back at the gym. Through the propped-open door, he could see Marlena setting up a cot. Eli was sitting on the edge of it, very still, his bare feet not quite touching the floor. Boone said, neither am I. Wendell agreed to one thing, and one thing only. He would call it a wellness move. The boy was deaf. The shelter was loud. There was a retired ASL teacher who lived 2 miles out on the Bayou Road, Miss Eulalie Doucet, and Wendell would deputize the situation just enough to relocate Eli to her place for the night. Marlena could come or not come. Her choice, Marlena's choice, was not to come. She said it was so kind of them. And her boy did need quiet. And she would stay at the shelter to help with the kitchen. And she would visit in the morning. She kissed Eli on the top of the head before he left. Eli did not lean into it. He did not pull away either. He just was, the way a stone is. Boone took Eli on the back of his Harley, slow, with a borrowed rain poncho wrapped around the boy twice. Wendell rode behind in his cruiser. The Bayou Road was half flooded but passable. They went at the speed of a man walking. Miss Eulalie was waiting on her porch when they pulled up. She was 71. She was small and brown, and her white hair was in 2 braids, and she had a pair of reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck. She had taught deaf children in this parish for 38 years. She had been Eli's first teacher. She did not say hello to the men. She came down the porch steps in her slippers, and she went straight to Eli, and she signed something fast and warm. And Eli's whole body did a thing that almost looked like a sob, but had no sound in it. He went into her arms and stayed there a long minute. Miss Eulalie looked up at Boone over the top of Eli's head, and she said, You come in, both of you. I have coffee on the propane stove. Wendell, get in here, inside the house. The lamps were oil. The walls were full of children's drawings, taped up at all different heights, going back decades. Eli stood in the middle of the front room and turned slowly in a circle. Looking at them, Miss Eulalie watched him look. She said, soft, in the way a person speaks who had spent her life with people who could not hear words but could read mouths, she said, Baby, tell me what you came to tell me. Ellie took a breath. He looked at Boone. Boone gave him a small nod. Eli signed. He signed for a long time. Miss Eulalie watched. Wendell stood in the doorway with his hat in his hands. Boone sat on a wooden chair by the window and tried to follow what he could. When Eli was done, Miss Eulalie put her hands over her mouth. She said, Oh, sweet Jesus. She said it in English first, then she signed it. She turned to the men. She said, This is what he told me. You hear me good. His daddy passed in March on the oil rig. His name was Daniel Thibodeau. Marlena came into the house in June. She had been Daniel's hospice nurse when his first wife was dying of cancer 4 years ago. The children did not know that. They thought she was a friend from church. She moved in 3 months after Daniel's funeral. She married him on paper in October, 2 months before he died. The paper was filed after. Wendell said, Lord, Miss Eulalie was not done. She said, 3 days ago, when the storm warning went up, Marlena said they were all going to the shelter. Aurore did not want to go. Aurore is 6. She was clinging to her mama's wedding ring on a chain around her neck, and she would not let go. Eli told her, Sign language, he told. His sister, we will hide you in the storm cellar behind the rose bush till Mama comes back. He helped her down. He gave her his blanket. He gave her a flashlight. He told her, I will come back for you before the wincent starts. He went inside to get more blankets. When he came out, the cellar door was closed. Marlena was standing by the rose bush, wiping her hands on her apron. She told him, in spoken English which Eli reads off mouths, she told him, your sister ran off to your aunt's an hour ago. You did not see her go because you were upstairs. The wind is coming. We are leaving now. Miss Eulalie's voice was steady. It was the steady of a woman who had been a teacher and had learned how to deliver information that broke things. She said, Eli has not seen his sister in 41 hours. The room was quiet. Wendell sat down. He sat down on the floor because the chair was too far and his knees hold him. He said, Jesus God. Boone had not moved. He was looking at Eli. Ellie was looking at the floor. His hand was in his pocket. Boone could see the shape of something small and round under the fabric. He had noticed it earlier and not asked. Boone signed, What is in your pocket, son? Ellie pulled it out. It was a brass compass, old, worn smooth at the edges, the kind a man might carry his whole working life, and pass to his child without ceremony. Eli held it out flat on his palm. Boone said out loud, Very quiet, that's your daddy's. Ellie nodded. Boone said, What did he tell you about it? Ellie signed slow, so Boone could keep up. He said, My daddy told me, if you ever get scared, point the needle at something true. Boone took a long breath in. He had not cried in 19 years. He had cried when his daughter put Lila in his arms for the first time, and the baby had not flinched at his face, which most babies did. He had not cried since. He did not cry now, but he sat very still for a moment, and he looked at the compass in the boy's hand. And he thought about how a father with bad lungs and not enough time had reduced his entire life's wisdom into one sentence, small enough to fit in his son's pocket. Boone said, Can I show you something? He reached into his wallet. He took out a photograph. The photograph was creased. It was a picture of a little girl with brown skin and dark curls, maybe 8 years old, holding up both hands to the camera, both hands shaped into the sign for I love you. He said, This is Lila. She is my granddaughter. She is 11 now, same as you, and she cannot hear, same as you. She lives a long way from me, and I do not see her enough. And I am not very good at her language yet, but I am trying. I have been trying for 3 years. He looked at Eli. He said, I am telling you this because I want you to know something. I am not going to be very fast at understanding everything you tell me. I might miss words. I might miss whole sentences. But I am not going to stop watching your hands. Do you understand me? Eli nodded. Boone said, And I am going to bring your sister home. Ellie looked at him for a long time. Then he set the compass on the little wooden side table next to Boone's chair. He did not say anything in any language. He just left it there. Miss Eulalie crossed the room. She put a hand on Boone's shoulder. She said, You all need coffee. Sit. Wendell, you call your sheriff. Use my landline, the one with the cord. The lines on this road still work because the AT&T man owed me a favor in 1994. Wendell got up off the floor. He went to make the call. Boone said, Miss Eulalie, can I ask you something? She said, You can ask me anything, Mr. Vickers. He said, You have known this family a long time. She said, I have. He said, Is there any chance Marlena Thibodeau owns a doorbell camera? Miss Eulalie's eyes sharpened. She said, That is a very particular question. Boone said, Ma'am, I have been a corpsman in 2 wars and a mechanic for 30 years. I am not a smart man, but I know that women who plan things tend to forget about the small machines they did not buy themselves. Miss Eulalie was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Daniel Thibodeau bought a Ring doorbell from the hardware store on Main 8 months ago. I know because I helped him pick the model. He wanted the one with the battery backup. He said he wanted to be able to see his kids come home from school, even if the power went out. She looked at Boone. She said, That camera is still on that house. Marlena came to the Bayou Road at 4:30 in the afternoon. She did not come alone. She brought Reverend Cliff Aucoin with her, in his old Buick, with the windshield wipers still on, though the rain had stopped an hour ago. Reverend Cliff was 67. He had baptized half the town and buried the other half. He was a good man who had not yet been told he was about to be used. Marlena knocked on Miss Eulalie's screen door. She had brushed her hair. She was wearing a clean cardigan she had not been wearing at the shelter. She had been crying, or had made her eyes look like she had been crying, which is a different skill. She said through the screen, "Miss Eulalie, honey, I have come for my boy." Miss Eulalie opened the door but did not move from the doorway. She said, "Come on in, Marlena." Reverend. Coffees on Marlena came in. Reverend Cliff followed. He held his hat in both hands. Ellie was on the couch. He had been showing Boone the sign for compass, and the sign for star, and the sign for father, slow enough that Boone could mimic them back. When his stepmother walked in, his hands went into his lap and stayed there. Marlena went to him. She crouched down. She said, "Baby, I have been so worried. Mama is here. Mama is taking you home." Reverend Cliff said, soft and apologetic, "Boone, ma'am, I just want to say." Marlena came to me very upset. A boy this age should be with his family. There has been talk in the shelter. I am sure there is a misunderstanding. We are all tired. The storm has had its way with all of us. Boone stood up. He did not raise his voice. He had learned a long time ago that men who needed to raise the voice had already lost. He said, "Reverend, with respect, I am going to ask Mrs. Thibodeau one question. If she can answer it, the boy goes with her, and I will not say another word, and I will buy you both a tank of gas on my way out of town." Reverend Cliff said, "All right. That sounds fair." Marlena said, "Of course, Mr. Vickers. Of course." Boone said, "Ma'am, I would like you to sign your son's name. In ASL right now." In front of him. The room went still. Marlena's mouth opened a little. Then it closed. Then it opened again. She said, "Oh, honey, I never had the chance to learn. With everything. With Daniel passing. I have been meaning to take a class." Boone said, "Ma'am, your husband bought your stepson hearing aids that did not work for him when he was 6. After that, the school tested him and put him in ASL classes here in this parish. He has been signing for 5 years. You have been in his life for 4 months. You have never learned the word for your own son's name." Marlena said, "I am working on it," Boone said. "Sign one word, ma'am." "Any word." "Yes. No. Hello." Marlena did not move. Reverend Cliff was looking at her now. Not the way he had looked at her in the Buick. A different way. Marlena gave a small laugh. It was the wrong kind of laugh. She said, "I do not think I should have to perform tricks for a stranger in a stranger's house, Reverend. This is my son. The law says so. I have the paperwork at home." Boone said, "Then let us go to your home." She said, "What?" He said, "You have a daughter who is 6. You said she is at your sister-in-law's in Baton Rouge. I would like to call Tante Regine with you on Miss Eulalie's landline, and I would like to hear Aurore say hello." Marlena said, "The lines are not working." Miss Eulalie said, "Mine works." Marlena said, "Regine does not have a landline. Cell towers are down. You know this." Boone said, "Then let us drive to your house and look in your daughter's room. If she packed for a visit, her things will be gone. If she did not, they will be there." Marlena said, "I am not going to be interrogated by a biker in front of my pastor." Boone said, "Ma'am, I am not interrogating you. I am offering you a way to put a child's mind to rest. He thinks his sister is hurt. He is wrong, or he is right. Either way, the kindest thing you can do as a mother is drive home with us and show him." Reverend Cliff said, "Very quiet, Marlena. He is right. Let us go." Marlena said, "Reverend." Reverend Cliff said, "Marlena, let us go." She stood up. Her cardigan was perfect. Her hair was perfect. There was something underneath all of it that was not perfect anymore, and you could almost see the edges of it through her face. Wendell was already at the door. He had been there for 10 minutes. He had not announced himself. He said, "Mrs. Thibodeau, I am going to follow y'all in the cruiser." Marlena said nothing. They drove out to the Thibodeau house in 3 vehicles. Marlena and Reverend Cliff in the Buick, Wendell behind them. Boone and Eli last. On the Harley, Eli's small arms around Boone's middle, the compass tight in his right fist where Boone could feel it through his jacket. The road bent through downed branches and pieces of someone else's fence. The cell signal flickered once and died again. The sky was the color of an old bruise. The Thibodeau house was on a half-acre lot with a long, crushed shell driveway. White siding, green shutters, a truck in the carport, a garden hose coiled neatly by the steps, the kind of house a hospice nurse might keep. A live oak tree the size of a barn had come down across the backyard. It had fallen exactly across the cellar door. Boone got off the bike. Eli slid down after him. The boy did not run. He walked. He walked across the soaked grass toward the rosebush along the back fence. The rosebush was 3 feet high and bare from the wind. Behind it, under the oak, was a horizontal cellar door made of cypress wood with iron hinges. Most of it was buried under the trunk. Eli got down on his knees in the mud. He put his ear to the wood. Then he pulled back, and he looked up at Boone, and he made a fist, and he tapped the wood with his knuckles. Once, twice, 3 times. He waited. Nothings. He tapped again. 4 times. The wood under his fist tapped back. 1, 2, 3, 4. The sound was very small. The sound was the size of a child's hand. Boone went down on his knees beside him. Behind them, Marlena had stopped walking. She was on the driveway. Her face had gone the white of a candle. She turned, very slowly, and she walked back toward the house. Not fast, not slow. The walk of a person who has remembered something they should have moved. Wendell saw her go. Wendell did not run after Marlena. He keyed, the radio on his shoulder, said 2 short words, and pointed at the front door of the house. One of the Iron Saints, a man named Tully, who had been a corrections officer for 10 years before he was a mechanic, came up the driveway from where the bikes were parked and stood between Marlena and the front porch. He did not touch her. He just stood there. Marlena stopped. She looked at the door of her own house, and she did not look at any of the men. Wendell went to her. He took her by the elbow. Gentle, the way you take an elderly woman across a parking lot, he said. Ma'am, I am going to ask you to wait in my cruiser. I am not arresting you. Not yet. But I am going to ask you to wait. She let him walk her to the cruiser. She did not say a word. Reverend Cliff stood in the driveway with his hat in his hands, and his mouth open a little, and his whole worldview rearranging itself in real time. Boone was at the cellar door. He did not have time for any of that. He keyed his own radio, the cheap one the Iron Saints used between bikes, and he called for chainsaws and jacks and every man within range. Within 4 minutes, 6 bikers were in the backyard. Tully brought a steel saw from a saddlebag. A man named Reuben brought a high-lift jack and a length of chain. Another man, Augustin, who had been a logger before his back gave out, walked the length of the fallen oak and put his hand on the trunk and said, "We cut here, here, and here. We do not cut over the door. We move the trunk in 3 pieces. 40 minutes. Boone said, "She has less than 40 minutes. Augustin said, "Then we go faster." The saws started. Eli stayed at the cellar door. He kept tapping. 4 taps, pause, 4 taps. The taps came back every time. Sometimes weaker, sometimes a little late, but they came back. While the saws ran, Boone went around to the front of the house. The doorbell camera was right where Miss Eulalie said it would be. A little white plastic eye on the porch trim. The faceplate was cracked from a piece of flying debris, but the lens was clear. Boone took out his phone.
He had no signal.
He did not need one. He walked back to the cruiser. Marlena was in the back seat. She would not look at him. Boone said, through the glass, "Ma'am, I am not going to talk to you. I am going to talk to the deputy." He turned to Wendell. He said, "Wendell, that doorbell records to a battery backup. Daniel set it up that way. The footage stays local on a chip for 90 days. Even with no internet, it is on that camera right now." Wendell looked up at the porch. Then he looked back at Marlena through the glass. Marlena was staring at her own hands. Wendell said, "I need a warrant for that footage." Boone said, "You do not need a warrant. The house belongs to 2 minor children. Their legal guardian, Pepper, since their father's death, is the parish until a court rules otherwise. Daniel's will, which Miss Eulalie witnessed, left the house in trust to the children." Marlena is a resident, not the owner. Wendell looked at him. He said, "Boone Vickers, how do you know that?" Boone said, "Miss Eulalie's landline works." Wendell almost smiled. He almost did. He did not have it in him today. He went up the porch. He got the camera down with a Leatherman. He pulled the chip out. He took it to the cruiser, and he plugged it into the laptop bolted to his dash. The footage started loading. Behind the house, the saws were chewing through oak. The footage on the chip went back 90 days, but Wendell only needed 3. He scrolled. The timestamp said the storm warning had gone up at 4:11 in the afternoon. He moved the slider. He found 6:47 p.m. The camera was a doorbell camera. It only saw the front porch, but the porch had a side angle that caught the corner of the backyard, just barely, through a gap in the wooden fence. At 6:47 p.m., in the footage, Marlena Thibodeau walked through frame from left to right, carrying a length of chain and a padlock. She walked behind the rosebush. She was out of view for 2 minutes and 11 seconds. She walked back through frame, from right to left, empty-handed, wiping her palms on her apron. Wendell paused the video. He turned in the seat. He looked through the rear glass at the woman who had let a 6-year-old girl stay in the dark for 41 hours. He did not say anything. He picked up the radio. He keyed it. He said, "Dispatch, this is Boudreaux. I have a child endangerment in progress, and I am about to upgrade." They got the oak off the door at 7:06 that evening. The light had gone the soft gold color the bayou gets after a storm, when the world looks washed and a little embarrassed about itself. Boone lifted the cellar door. He went down the wooden steps first. Eli came after him, slow. Aurora was sitting on a folded blanket against the far wall. She had a flashlight in her lap that had gone dim. She had her mother's wedding ring on a chain around her neck. She was holding a paper crane in each hand, and there were 20 more on the floor around her, gray and white, and one folded from the inside of a soup label. She had been counting hours by folding birds. She looked up when the light came in. She saw her brother. She did not run to him. She held up her hands. She signed, very small, very careful, the only sentence she had been working on for 2 days. She signed, "I knew you would come." Eli went to her. He sat down on the blanket next to her. They did not hug. They sat shoulder to shoulder, the way 2 children sit when they have been apart long enough to need to be quiet first. Boone went back up the steps and gave them the dark. The paramedics came in by airboat 30 minutes later. Aurora was dehydrated and cold, and her left ankle had a hairline fracture from the first hour when she had tried to push the door from inside. She would be in the hospital 4 days. She would be fine. Marlena was charged with attempted second-degree murder, 2 counts of child endangerment, insurance fraud relating to a policy she had quietly transferred into her own name 3 weeks before the storm, and falsification of a marriage license. The trial took 11 months. The jury was out 40 minutes. She is in St. Gabriel now. She will be there a long time. 6 weeks more. Tante Regine drove down from Lafayette and took both children home with her. She was Daniel's older sister, and she had been trying to get custody from the start. The parish had not listened to her because she was a single woman who works the night shift at a hospital, which was the parish had decided not a stable home. The parish has since revised its definition of stable. Boone helped move the children's things. He built a bunk bed in Tante Regine's spare room. He installed a doorbell camera on her front porch. Aurora picked the color of the paint in their new room. She picked yellow. She said, signing, "The color of the inside of an envelope before you open it." Boone called his daughter in Texas the Sunday after the move. He had not called her in 2 years. He was not good at the phone. He turned on the video. Lila came on the screen. She was 11. She had her mother's eyes. Boone raised his hand. He signed, slow, the way a man signs who has been practicing his whole life for one sentence. He signed, "I am here. I am sorry I was not here sooner. I am here now." Lila signed back,